They said billionaires never fall for scams. But one sheikh, a man whose fortune stretched across oil, gold, and luxury hotels, came terrifyingly close to losing $250 million in a single deal. The setting was a golden ballroom in Dubai, filled with foreign investors, brokers in tailored suits, and documents worth more than entire nations' budgets. Every eye was on the sheikh as he prepared to sign. The deal promised rare diamonds from Africa, a partnership so grand that newspapers had already prepared their headlines. But then, something no one expected happened. A voice, soft yet sharp, cut through the silence. "This is a fake," the girl said. She wasn't an expert. She wasn't a lawyer. She wasn't a billionaire. She was the maid's daughter, standing in the shadows, barely 17, with nothing but perfect Arabic on her tongue. And in that single moment, she saved a man from ruin, stopped a scam worth $250 million, and changed the course of her own life forever. This is the untold story of how power, greed, and fate collided, and how truth was spoken by the most unlikely voice in the room. The sheikh was not just a man of wealth, he was an institution. His very name carried weight that moved markets and influenced nations. When he walked into a room, silence followed. When he spoke, people listened not out of fear, but because every word seemed carved from gold. His empire stretched across oil fields, luxury hotels, and international trade. Yet, like every empire, his was not immune to ambition, his or others. The story began with a whisper in the corridors of European finance, a syndicate claiming to control mines of rare blue diamonds, stones said to be so scarce that they could dictate entire markets. They came armed with glossy portfolios, carefully crafted contracts, and a charm that could melt even the coldest skepticism. Their promise was simple. Invest a staggering $250 million, and the sheikh would hold a monopoly on one of the rarest resources in the world. The sheikh had heard many proposals in his life, most of them laughable, some intriguing. But this one, it glittered differently. Diamonds had always fascinated him. They were not like oil or gold, they were eternal, portable, and seductive. Owning the rarest diamonds meant not just wealth but prestige, something beyond measure. So after months of correspondence, negotiations, and subtle persuasion, the day of the final signing arrived. The venue was no less grand than the deal itself, a ballroom bathed in golden chandeliers, marble floors polished to a mirror's shine, and guards stationed discreetly at every corner. Dozens of men in tailored suits filled the room, their eyes sharp, their smiles calculated. These were not simple businessmen. They were predators dressed in silk. Yet they played their roles well. Documents were neatly stacked on mahogany tables, pens lined like soldiers waiting for battle, and contracts prepared in multiple languages. Everything looked perfect, almost too perfect. The sheikh, calm and unreadable, entered the hall draped in traditional robes, the kind that spoke of heritage and power. His advisors flanked him, whispering reassurances, pointing at highlighted sections of the contract. Lawyers nodded solemnly, their glasses reflecting lines of text they believed were flawless. To them, this was a formality. The deal was done, but far from the polished negotiations, tucked in the corner like an afterthought, stood a woman and her daughter. The woman was one of the sheikh's maids, present only because she had accompanied her master to the event, ready to attend to his personal needs. Her daughter, barely 17, stood beside her, wide-eyed, silently absorbing a world she had only seen in glimpses. The girl's life had been modest, even humble. She had grown up in the servants' quarters, listening to muffled conversations of men who shaped empires. She had no riches, no titles, no authority. Yet she carried something none of them possessed: fluency in languages. A gift her mother had insisted she learn: Arabic, English, French. She had mastered them all, picking up words like treasures because to her, knowledge was the only wealth she could claim. And as fate would have it, that wealth would soon become priceless. The negotiations pressed forward. The syndicate representatives smiled as they explained clauses, each sentence smoother than the last. They spoke of shipments, secure transfers, and bonded warehouses. They spoke of confidentiality and discretion. They painted visions of profit that sparkled brighter than the diamonds they claimed to possess. The sheikh listened carefully, his eyes scanning the papers, his pen tapping lightly on the table. The advisors reassured him at every turn. "Everything checks out," the lawyers confirmed. "It is airtight." But then, as the girl's gaze drifted across the papers, something caught her attention. A phrase, a single line in Arabic. To the untrained eye, it was flawless. But to her, a native speaker with keen ears and sharper instincts, it was wrong. Not grammatically, not stylistically, but culturally. The kind of mistake that no true Arab would make. A phrase that revealed the hand of someone pretending, someone forging. Her heart began to race. She blinked, unsure at first if she had truly seen it. Perhaps it was nothing. Perhaps it was nerves. Who was she to question billionaires and their lawyers? She was just a maid's daughter, a shadow in the corner. But then she looked again. The word stared back at her, mocking, daring, and with it realization dawned. This was not a contract. It was a trap. The girl's breath quickened. She turned to her mother, tugging at her sleeve, whispering urgently. But her mother, bound by years of servitude and fear of consequence, shook her head violently, warning her to stay silent. Silence was safety. Silence was survival. But silence, the girl realized, would also mean ruin. The Sheikh's pen was lifted now, poised above the paper. Millions of dollars, reputations, futures, all were balanced on the tip of that pen. The room leaned forward collectively, breaths held, as history prepared to etch itself in ink. And in that suffocating moment, something stirred inside the girl. Courage, or perhaps destiny. She stepped forward, her small frame trembling, her voice caught in her throat. No one noticed at first. She was invisible, a servant's child out of place. But then with every ounce of strength she possessed, she spoke. "This is a fake," she said. The words cut through the room like a blade. The chandeliers seemed to flicker. The murmurs died instantly, and every pair of eyes turned toward her. The Sheikh's pen froze midair. His advisors looked bewildered. The syndicate representatives stiffened, their rehearsed smiles faltering. The girl repeated herself louder this time, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. This is a fake. But what gave her the certainty to challenge billionaires? And why did her words strike fear in men who thought they had already won? The room froze. Silence, heavy and suffocating, wrapped around the golden ballroom. A 17-year-old girl had just interrupted a multi-million-dollar deal, her voice rising above lawyers, advisors, and billionaires. The Sheikh's pen hovered in the air, its ink poised to seal history. But now the only sound was the echo of her words. This is a fake. For a moment nobody moved. The syndicate members exchanged quick glances, their polished smiles twitching into unease. The lawyers frowned, unsure whether to dismiss the girl or demand clarification. The advisors whispered nervously, caught between loyalty and confusion. And then the Sheikh spoke. His voice was calm, steady, yet edged with curiosity. "What do you mean, child?" The girl swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at her to stay quiet, to disappear back into the shadows. But the word she had seen, burned in her mind like fire. She stepped closer, her voice trembling at first, then gaining strength. "The contract. The Arabic. It is wrong." The lawyers leaned forward, snatching the pages, eyes darting over the text. To them it looked flawless. Perfect script, elegant strokes, sophisticated wording. But they read with their eyes. She read with her soul. "There," she pointed, her finger landing on a clause buried in the middle of the contract. It said, "Ownership shall be transferred upon acknowledgement of possession." In Arabic, it had been rendered slightly differently. Tamlik yantakil inda al-itiraf bi-al-hiyaza. To the lawyers, it sounded correct. To the advisors, it made sense. But to her, it was wrong, subtly, dangerously wrong. In proper Arabic, no one would phrase it that way. It was not the language of the people. It was the language of translation software, of someone unfamiliar with true cultural nuance, she explained, her voice rising with confidence now. No Arab would write this. This is the Arabic of a foreigner. They are pretending. The Sheikh's brows furrowed. He took the contract himself, reading the lines slowly, tasting the words. He had grown used to trusting translators, lawyers, experts. Rarely did he examine such details personally, but now, guided by her conviction, he felt the strangeness too. The phrase was sterile, hollow, a mask. The syndicate's lead negotiator stepped forward quickly, his tone sharp, almost scolding. "This is nonsense," he snapped. "We hired certified translators. The contract is legitimate. Do not let a servant's child interrupt serious business." But the Sheikh raised his hand, silencing him. His eyes, dark and penetrating, remained on the girl. "How do you know?" he asked. The girl's heart thundered, but her voice was steady. "Because I grew up with this language. This is not how we speak. This is how someone pretends to speak." Her words rippled through the hall. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Doubt crept into the room like a shadow. One of the lawyers, defensive now, adjusted his glasses. "Even if the phrasing is unusual, it does not mean fraud. Perhaps it was just an awkward translation." But the Sheikh did not look convinced. He leaned back in his chair, his gaze sharp. For the first time, he noticed small details he had ignored before. The way the syndicate members avoided his eyes, how their confidence seemed forced, how their documents, though immaculate, lacked the subtle authenticity he had seen in real dealings. The girl's courage had cracked the illusion, and once an illusion cracks, it never looks whole again. The lead negotiator tried to recover. He spread his hands dramatically. "Your Highness, please let us not be distracted by the musings of a child. This deal has been examined by your own experts. Every signature, every seal, every detail is in order. Shall we allow such a fortune to slip away because of a word?" The Sheikh did not respond immediately. Instead, he turned to his advisors. They shuffled uncomfortably, glancing between the girl and the papers. None dared contradict him, yet none dared admit failure either. The tension thickened. The ballroom felt smaller now, the chandeliers dimmer. The syndicate's smiles had hardened into masks of frustration, and through it all the girl stood silent, her eyes locked on the sheikh, praying he would believe her. Finally he spoke. "Bring me the original draft." The syndicate hesitated. Too long. That hesitation was an answer in itself. The sheikh's eyes narrowed. "Now," he commanded. Reluctantly, they produced another document, hastily folded, as if hidden. The sheikh unrolled it slowly, scanning the lines. And there, clear as daylight, was another inconsistency, another phrase that no true Arab writer would use. The room erupted. Lawyers began arguing. Advisors whispered urgently, and the syndicate members shifted uneasily. The sheikh's suspicion had been lit, and now it burned fiercely. But the girl did not relax. She knew this was only the beginning. A forged phrase was a crack in the wall, but behind that wall darker secrets were waiting. If one word could expose the fraud, what would happen when the entire scheme unraveled? The ballroom was no longer the same place it had been just an hour ago. What had once been filled with polished smiles and confident whispers now pulsed with unease. A single sentence from a maid's daughter had turned triumph into turmoil. The sheikh sat back. The document spread before him like battlefield maps. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with suspicion. Around him, advisors fidgeted, lawyers whispered hurriedly, and the syndicate members tried to mask the unease creeping into their expressions. The sheikh's voice, deep and steady, broke the silence. "If this contract is as legitimate as you claim, then you will not mind a deeper review." The lead negotiator forced a laugh. "Of course, Your Highness. Transparency is the foundation of trust," but the strain in his voice betrayed him. The sheikh gestured to his head advisor. "Verify the clauses. Every word. Compare them to international law. I want nothing overlooked." Papers shuffled, pens scratched furiously, and the sound of rapid translation filled the air. The ballroom became a war room, every eye locked on the text, every silence sharper than steel. The girl stood still beside her mother, watching, her heart pounding. She had not expected her words to matter this much. Yet now she could feel the weight of the entire empire pressing on her fragile shoulders. It didn't take long before another advisor looked up, pale. "Your Highness," he said carefully, "this clause, if signed as it is, would give the syndicate ownership rights over the diamonds before you even receive them. It is written as though possession itself is merely symbolic." The sheikh's gaze sharpened. "Explain." The advisor adjusted his glasses nervously. "In essence, they could claim the money, declare that delivery has been acknowledged, and never provide the actual goods. You would have no legal standing to dispute it. The language is deliberate." The ballroom erupted into murmurs. The lawyers' faces flushed with embarrassment. How had they missed it? How had this girl seen what they had not? The syndicate leader tried to regain control. He leaned forward, his voice steady but his hands twitching slightly. "This is a misunderstanding. A translation oversight. Nothing more. We are men of honor." But the sheikh was not swayed. He studied the man intently, his silence louder than any accusation. "Men of honor," the sheikh repeated, almost to himself. He let the words hang heavy before snapping his fingers. A guard stepped forward instantly. "Bring me the courier, the one who delivered these documents." The syndicate exchanged nervous glances. Their carefully choreographed act was crumbling. The courier, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, was brought in. His clothes were ordinary, his posture stiff. He looked at the sheikh, then at the syndicate, then back again as though caught between two masters. The sheikh leaned forward. "Who gave you these documents? Who translated them?" The courier stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. I was told to deliver them. That is all. Answer me." The sheikh pressed, his tone sharp as a blade. Finally, the truth spilled out. They were prepared overseas. Not in Dubai, not by Arab lawyers. "I was paid to say nothing." The room exploded. Advisors gasped. Lawyers cursed under their breath, and the syndicate's facade shattered. Their leader slammed his fist against the table, furious. "This is nonsense. Lies from a desperate man." But the sheikh no longer needed convincing. He had seen enough. His hand rested on the contract, the ink of his pen still glistening, untouched. He looked at the girl, his expression unreadable. "You saw what none of my experts did," he said quietly. "Tell me, why did you speak when silence would have been safer?" The girl hesitated, her throat dry. Then with trembling honesty she replied, "Because truth is not safe when spoken too late." The words lingered in the air, heavier than gold. Even the sheikh seemed struck by them. The syndicate, desperate now, switched tactics. Their negotiator leaned in, his voice dripping with persuasion. "Your Highness, think of the opportunity. Think of what you are throwing away because of a girl's superstition. Do not insult yourself with suspicion. Sign the deal and the diamonds will flow. You will not regret it." But the sheikh's face darkened. "The only thing I regret," he said coldly, "is trusting men who think I am blind." The syndicate froze. The ballroom was silent again, but now it was the silence of doom. The sheikh rose to his feet, his robes flowing like a storm, his presence overwhelming the hall. "You dared attempt fraud in my house, in my city. And you thought I would not see?" He turned, his eyes briefly resting on the girl. But truth has a way of finding a voice. The guards stepped forward, surrounding the syndicate. Their polished composure collapsed into panic. One shouted, "You cannot do this. We represent powerful men. You will regret crossing us." The sheikh did not flinch. "I regret nothing. Guards, take them." As the syndicate was dragged away, their protests echoing into the corridors, the ballroom felt lighter. The deal was dead. The scam was broken, and all of it because of one girl who dared to speak. But for the sheikh, suspicion had only grown deeper. If the syndicate had been so bold as to risk scamming him in person, what else lay hidden beneath the surface? What forces had emboldened them to attempt a $250 million theft? The girl had saved him from disaster, yet in doing so, she had opened a door to something far more dangerous. If this was only the surface of the scam, what secrets lay buried beneath, and who truly stood to gain? The ballroom had emptied, but the echoes of the syndicate's protests still lingered in the sheikh's mind. He had seen betrayal before, but never this bold. To attempt fraud in his palace under his watch, for a sum so vast, it was either arrogance or something far more dangerous. The syndicate men were locked away, awaiting questioning. Yet the sheikh's instincts told him they were not the true masterminds. They were pawns, polished and dressed in suits, but pawns all the same. No pawns would risk crossing a man like him without someone powerful pulling their strings. That night, in his private chambers, the sheikh sat in silence. The contract spread before him like a poisonous serpent. He read it again and again, tracing the forged Arabic, the clever phrasing, the subtle traps. He had almost signed it, almost fallen. The thought unsettled him more than he cared to admit. He turned his gaze to the girl, the maid's daughter, summoned to his side once more. She stood nervously, unsure why she had been called. "You spoke when no one else dared," the sheikh said slowly. "You saw what none of my experts saw." "How?" The girl lowered her eyes. "I listen, Your Highness," I read. "Words matter to me." The sheikh studied her in silence, then nodded. "Words saved me today, but words may also reveal who sent these men." The following day, the interrogations began. The syndicate members, stripped of their arrogance, were seated in a cold chamber, guarded on all sides. The sheikh did not attend himself. He had men for that, but he listened through hidden speakers, his advisors beside him. At first, the men denied everything. "We are businessmen," they insisted. This was a misunderstanding. Their voices wavered, but they clung to the performance. Then came the pressure. One by one, the cracks appeared. Threats of exile, promises of leniency, silent stares that lasted too long. The truth dripped out in fragments, and what emerged chilled the sheikh more than any outright fraud. The syndicate had not acted alone. Behind them stood a network, shell companies, shadow banks, offshore accounts, and above it all, one name, a rival sheikh from a neighboring emirate, a man with ambitions as vast as his greed. He had orchestrated the entire scheme, using foreigners as fronts to avoid suspicion. The motive was clear: to humiliate, to weaken, to strip away wealth and reputation in one masterstroke. Had the contract been signed, it would have been more than a financial disaster. It would have been a public disgrace, one that even his power might not have survived. The sheikh's advisors erupted in fury. "This is war," one shouted. "We must strike back immediately." But the sheikh raised a hand for silence. His eyes were colder than steel. "Revenge is easy," he said. "Truth is harder, and truth must be undeniable." He turned again to the girl. "You who saw the first crack will help me see the rest. You will read everything, every word they give, until nothing remains hidden." The girl's heart leapt in her chest. She was just a servant's child. She had no training, no title, no authority. Yet the sheikh was entrusting her with a task that even his highest-paid advisors had failed, and she could not refuse. Over the next days, the girl sat surrounded by documents, letters, contracts, financial statements. Her young eyes scanned tirelessly, her mind piecing together patterns others had ignored. She saw repeated errors, phrases copied and pasted across different deals, handwriting that changed suspiciously between pages. Each discovery was a thread, and each thread led to the same loom, the rival sheikh's hidden hand. But with each revelation came danger. Word spread quickly in the city. Whispers filled the souks and the coffee houses. Men asked questions about the girl. Who was she? How had she stopped the deal? Why was she in the sheikh's chambers? And then came the threats. Notes slipped under the servants' doors, shadows lingering near the palace gates. A warning carved crudely on the wall of the servants' quarters. Silence her, or she silences you. The sheikh doubled the guards, but he knew protection alone would not be enough. If his enemies had dared strike with fraud, they would not hesitate to strike with violence. Still, he pressed on. Each night he gathered his advisors and presented the evidence. Each night the web grew clearer, and each night he felt the pressure mount, until one evening when the girl, exhausted but resolute, placed a final document before him. "Look here," she whispered. It was a bank transfer, disguised, routed through multiple accounts but traceable to one origin, the rival sheikh's own holdings. Proof. The sheikh stared at it, the corners of his mouth tightening. The trap had been elaborate, but the truth had found its way out, and it was a servant's daughter who had uncovered it. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. "You have done more than you know," he told her. "But understand this. The storm has only begun, for if the rival had failed once, he would not stop. He would come again, harder, sharper, determined not just to steal money but to crush him completely. And in that storm, the girl would no longer be a shadow. She would be a target. If exposing the scam brought danger, what would happen when the hidden hand decided to strike back? The palace had always been a fortress of marble and gold, but now it felt like a cage of glass. Every shadow seemed longer, every whisper sharper. The sheikh's rivals had been exposed, but exposure does not kill ambition. It only makes it desperate. The first strike came quietly. A trusted advisor of the sheikh, one who had sat at his side for years, was found missing. His chamber empty, his belongings gone. Within hours, rumors spread that he had defected, carrying with him secrets worth more than any treasure. The sheikh heard the news with a face carved from stone. "They will not stop with him," he said. "They will come for me. And for her, the maid's daughter." Since the day she had spoken up, she had been under watch. Guards followed her steps, doors locked behind her at night, yet she felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing in from beyond the walls. At dawn, a message arrived, delivered in silence. A simple piece of parchment slipped under the palace gates. 4 words scrawled in rough ink. "The girl must die." The sheikh read it without flinching, then handed it to his captain of guards. "Increase her protection. Triple it." But the girl's mother wept that night, clutching her daughter tightly. "You should never have spoken," she whispered. We were safe in silence. The girl, though trembling, shook her head. Silence is what they wanted, and silence is how they win. The next day, the retaliation grew bolder. A convoy of the sheikh's trade ships bound for Europe was ambushed at sea. The attackers left nothing but smoke and ashes, a message written in fire. Wealth was not untouchable. The sheikh's advisors pleaded with him. "Strike back. Show them no mercy." But the sheikh remained calm, though his eyes betrayed the storm beneath. "Revenge without proof is weakness. They want me to lash out blindly. I will not." Yet restraint came at a cost. The city buzzed with rumors. Some whispered that the sheikh had lost his grip. Others claimed the girl was a witch, bringing misfortune upon the palace. Markets trembled, allies wavered, and the rival grew bolder by the day. Then came the night when the palace itself was breached. It was a festival evening, fireworks bursting in the sky. Amid the celebration, 3 men slipped through the outer walls disguised as entertainers. Their daggers were hidden in tambourines, their faces painted in harmless colors. But their target was not the sheikh, it was the girl. They found her in the courtyard where she had wandered briefly for air. The guards were near but not close enough. One man lunged, his blade glinting in the firelight. The girl froze, her breath caught in terror, until a guard intercepted, steel clashing against steel. Shouts erupted, alarms rang, and the courtyard filled with chaos. The assassins fought like cornered wolves, but the palace guards were relentless. 2 fell quickly, but the third broke away, sprinting into the night. He was captured at the gates, dragged back in chains, his mask torn away. And when the sheikh saw his face, his suspicions hardened into certainty. The assassin bore the crest of the rival emirate burned into his skin. The proof was undeniable. The sheikh summoned his council immediately, the girl present at his side despite her mother's protests. The chamber burned with fury. Advisors shouted for war. Generals demanded armies be mobilized. The girl sat silently, trembling, the parchment's words echoing in her mind. "The girl must die." The sheikh raised his hand, silencing the uproar. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of thunder. "They have declared war, not with words, but with blood. Yet we will not answer with blind rage. We will answer with truth so sharp it cuts deeper than any sword." He turned to the girl, his gaze steady. "You uncovered their fraud. You exposed their deception. Now you will help expose their hand to the world. Not as a servant's child, but as the voice of truth." The girl's lips parted in shock. She had never imagined such words directed at her. She was no leader, no noblewoman. She was just a daughter of a maid. Yet the sheikh looked at her not as a child, but as an equal in this fight. "Still," she whispered, "but they will come again. They will not stop." The sheikh nodded gravely. "Yes, and that is why we must end this before they can strike once more." The council fell silent, waiting. The sheikh stood, his robes flowing like storm clouds. "Prepare a gathering. Invite the leaders, the traitors, the allies. We will not whisper this in secret chambers. We will reveal their treachery before the eyes of the world." The announcement sent shockwaves through the palace. To expose such a scheme publicly was unprecedented. It would humiliate his rival beyond repair, but it would also place the sheikh and the girl in greater danger than ever before. That night, as the palace slept under heavy guard, the girl lay awake. Her mind replayed the moment in the courtyard. The flash of steel, the rush of fear, the guard's desperate cry. She had saved a sheikh from a $250 million scam, but in doing so, she had painted a target on her own back. And she could not shake the haunting question: had she spoken truth to save a life, or had she unleashed a war that might consume them all? If truth was powerful enough to save the sheikh, was it powerful enough to survive the retaliation now closing in? The day of reckoning arrived beneath a sky of fire. The sheikh had summoned merchants, diplomats, rulers, and foreign investors to his palace. Word had spread across the region like wildfire. A revelation was coming, one that would shake the foundations of power itself. The ballroom, once tainted by deceit, now stood ready for judgment. Chandeliers blazed brighter than ever. Banners of honor draped across marble walls, and soldiers lined every archway, their presence heavy with anticipation. The sheikh entered with a stride that silenced the crowd. He wore robes of deep black embroidered with gold, a symbol not of mourning but of authority. His gaze swept the hall, sharp and unyielding. Behind him walked the girl, small and nervous but no longer invisible. She had become the whisper everyone wanted to see. The rival sheikh had sent envoys too, bold enough to show their faces, confident that politics would protect them. They stood in a cluster, smug, whispering to one another. They expected a spectacle, perhaps even a humiliation. What they did not expect was the blade of truth sharpened against their own necks. The sheikh raised his hand and silence descended. His voice carried across the hall, deep and deliberate. "Today we gather not for wealth, not for trade, but for truth. For too long, shadows have hidden schemes designed to rob and to destroy. Today those shadows will burn." He gestured to his advisors, who brought forth the documents, the fraudulent contracts, the forged clauses, the trail of deceit uncovered piece by piece. The crowd leaned forward as evidence was read aloud, each word striking harder than the last. Gasps filled the hall as inconsistencies were exposed, the rivals' fingerprints revealed in every forged line. But the climax came not from advisors nor lawyers. It came from the girl. The sheikh turned to her, his eyes steady. "Speak," he said. The girl's heart pounded, but she stepped forward. Her voice, though soft, carried with surprising strength. She pointed to the forged Arabic clauses, reading them aloud, then correcting them with the proper words. She explained how no true Arab speaker would use such phrases, how each error revealed the hand of pretenders. The hall listened in rapt silence. Every word from her lips cut deeper into the rival's mask of power. When she finished, she raised her head and said clearly, "This was not a mistake. This was a crime." And they believed no one would notice. The crowd erupted. Murmurs surged like waves, disbelief turning to outrage, outrage turning to fury. Diplomats shook their heads. Merchants muttered curses. Allies looked at the rival envoys with disdain. The rival's representatives tried to protest.
"Lies! These are lies from a child!"
"You cannot," but their voices were drowned out by the roar of truth. Too many eyes had seen. Too many ears had heard. Proof had been laid bare, undeniable. The sheikh stepped forward, his presence filling the hall. "You dared to defraud me. You dared to think me blind. And yet, it was not my advisors, not my wealth, not my power that saved me. It was the voice of one who had nothing, and because she spoke, you are undone." He turned his gaze to the envoys, his words sharp as a sword. "Go back to your master. Tell him his plot has failed. Tell him the world has seen his shame. And tell him this: never again will he find shadows dark enough to hide his treachery." The guards moved, seizing the envoys, escorting them out under jeers and whispers. The rival's name, once spoken with respect, now carried the stench of disgrace. The hall thundered with applause, not for the sheikh alone, but for the girl who had dared to speak. She stood frozen, overwhelmed, as powerful men and women turned their eyes to her with awe. She was no longer a shadow. She was a light. Later, in the quiet of the chamber, the sheikh spoke to her and her mother. His voice, though softer, still carried weight. "You saved me from ruin. You saved more than money. You saved honor. Such debts cannot be repaid with gold." The girl shook her head. "I did only what was right." The sheikh studied her, then smiled faintly. "Sometimes, child, doing what is right is the rarest wealth of all." And so the tale spread beyond the palace walls, carried across deserts and seas. The story of the maid's daughter who stopped a $250 million scam with a single sentence. A reminder that truth, even from the humblest lips, can topple the mightiest deception. But for the girl, life would never be the same. She had spoken once and changed everything, and the world was waiting to hear what she might say next. And so the scam ended, but the legend began. One girl, one voice, one truth that shook an empire. If this story gripped you, imagine how many other untold truths wait to be uncovered. Stories of courage, betrayal, and the power of a single voice. Don't let them pass you by. Subscribe now, hit the bell icon, and join us as we bring more real stories that prove truth is always stranger than fiction.